everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We want to make sure that we get started. We have a lot of great speakers that are going to be delivering important messages today, so I want to make sure we start. So thank you again. Welcome. My name is Ana Velasquez. I'm the Vice President of the Democratic Women for Monterey County and Mayor of the City of Soledad. So I see some of my Soledad constituents here. I want to say hi. Thank you for being here. So again, thank you for joining us today. We are humbled and grateful to be able to gather in person for this important forum to reflect and learn from the past and look forward to the future on this critical anniversary of the murder of George Perry Floyd Jr. 2 years ago today. As our community continues to be plagued by racism and social injustice, our communities of color continue to be the target of far-right politics that have led to systemic oppression, racism, political violence, and an increase in hate crimes in sacred places of worship and everyday fixtures such as grocery stores and our schools. Once again, we are traumatized by the recent mass shootings in Buffalo, New York, where 10 Black residents were killed by an 18-year-old white supremacist at Tops Friendly Market. Let us not forget the names of the innocent victims who perished on this day. They are Aaron Salter Jr., Celestine Cheney, Roberta A. Drury, Andre McNeil, Catherine Massey, Marcus D. Morrison, Hayward Patterson, Geraldine Talley, Ruth Whitfield, and Pearl Young. And unfortunately, our country continues to experience more senseless violence and mass shootings. Most recent was yesterday at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, where we heard 19 children and 2 adults were killed. We pray for the comfort and the healing of the family members. And we don't want to forget their names. Eva Mireles, 4th grade teacher. Irma Garcia, 4th grade teacher. Javier Lopez, 10 years. Amari Jo Garza, 10 years. Anabel Guadalupe Rodriguez, 10 years old. Usaya Garcia, 8 years. Eli Garcia, 10 years old. Navaya Bravo, 10 years old. McKenna Alrad, 10 years old. Eliana Elijah Cruz Torres, 10 years old. Maite Juliana Rodriguez, 10 years old. Tess Marie Mata, Rogelio Torres, 10 years old. Lithia Ramirez, 10 years old. Jose Flores, 10 years old. JC Carmelo Luevanas, 10 years old. Jelaya Nicole Silguero, 11 years old. Miranda Mathis, 11 years old. Alejandra Alexi Anaya Rubio, 10 years old. Jackie Casares, 10 years old. These type of unspeakable crimes need to stop. We cannot become numb to this violence and disregard for human life. We need to hold our elected leaders and government structures accountable and demand justice for every single life that has been lost and every single community that has been devastated by guns, by violence, and by hate. Today we have an opportunity to learn from and to respond to this hate in our nation until every member of all of our communities have the same opportunity to live free of fear of racial violence. None of us are free. As Nelson Mandela said, to be free is not merely to cast off one's chains. but to live in a way that respects and enhances the freedoms of others. At the DWMC, freedom and equality are at the heart of the work and both inextricably linked to a strong and vibrant democracy. So with that, I thank you for joining us. We know we have a lot of work in front of us, but I am thankful that we're in this room together and to acknowledge how difficult it is to be here, yet how important it is to be here. So with that, I want to begin by introducing some of the elected officials and their representatives that are here with us today. And if we can just stand up when I call your name. Susie Brusa, District Director for Congressman Jimmy Caneda. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Kate Daniels, Policy Advisor for State Senator John Laird. And I don't see Jenny. Jenny's not here. Alexis. Alana Miles, Monterey Peninsula Unified School District. Rosalind Green, Monterey Peninsula College Trustee. Yuri Anderson, Monterey Peninsula College Trustee. You have George Riley, Monterey Peninsula Waste Management District Director. Gail Morton. Gail Morton, Marina Coast Water District. And Jacqueline Simon, Vice President, North Monterey County Fire Protection District. Okay, I hope I didn't miss anyone, but if I did, if you can please stand up so we can recognize you. Okay, perfect. Okay, so at this time, I invite any members that may have any announcements to share with us, and any of those that are running for elected office to please briefly stand, introduce yourself to our membership, and you have 30 seconds. Or less.
Thank you. I'm Kate Daniels, and I am bringing the very last day of the opportunity, it's the very last day to sign the initiative, the Safe and Affordable Quality Child Care Initiative in Monterey County. We need 11,000 signatures to get this on the ballot, and we are so close. So I have one last page to fill, and I'm hoping you all will sign it, and I think that's about 30 seconds, but I've got also information for you to please support us. Let's get this initiative on the ballot, and let's guarantee that every child in Monterey County has the same opportunities to start ready for kindergarten. Thank you. And I'm just going to go ahead and make a few more announcements based on what we've gathered in the DWMC that might be of interest to everyone in our group. There is a screening tonight. It's a screening of the film The Color of Fear. It's at Lighthouse Cinemas in Pacific Grove at 6 p.m. This event is hosted by Black Leaders and Allies Collaborative. So please see me if you have any questions about that. That is tonight, Lighthouse Cinemas. Please mark your calendars for the sustainability event. We're going back in person this year at the Democratic Women of Monterey County, and that event is going to be on September 11th, the Hacienda Hay and Feed in Carmel Valley. So please mark your calendars for that. The third annual Juneteenth celebration will be Sunday, June 18th at 1 p.m., and that will be at Laguna Grande Park in Seaside. Should I do the membership announcement as well? Okay. Saturday, June 18th. Did I get that wrong?
You got it right now.
Oh, good. Saturday. My apologies. Okay, the gala was on a Sunday. Sorry about that. Okay, good. And then I also want to encourage you to please make sure your membership to the DWMC is current. This is especially important as we are in campaign season, and the most important work that we do is we support women and our allies get into elected office. And so you can visit our membership software, Member Planet, check your membership. If it's not current, you can bring it current, or you can join us for the first time if you're not yet a member. We'd love to have you in the club. All right, thank you very much.
Respect to all of
you. It's good to be in the Lord's presence. Wherever I am, I'm in God's presence. I may be the only clergy here. I'm going to ask you to bow your heads with me for a moment of prayer. Our Father and our God, how merciful and how wonderful you are. We are thankful for this day, and we're thankful for this organization, the Democratic Women of Monterey County. We're thankful that you have spared our lives, but we are sad, oh God, that the enemy has stolen lives from us. We pray for the families in Texas that have suffered loss, oh God, due to senseless violence. Father, we pray for the family of George Floyd and all those who have been lost to violence. We pray that your mercy would cover us, and God be with the families as they're going through this turmoil and these dark days. We pray, oh God, that you would let your protection be upon our community, oh God. We pray, oh God, for righteousness to reign among our leaders. We pray, oh God, that you would guide us through this difficult time as we continue to do your work. It's in your Son's name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. I'll take my 30 seconds, maybe 20. Thank you so much for having this forum. DWMC, NAACP, the Black Caucus, for putting this together so that we can have that conversation, so we can start having these conversations. As a representative from the Sheriff's Office, and I believe from law enforcement here today, I don't see anybody else from law enforcement, we welcome this. It's what we really need to do, and we need to make sure that we have these conversations so we can continue to do better. And again, just thank you very much for having us.
Hi, my name is Annette Eastek, and I'm running for the Monterey County Board of Education. And I will just add that I think that education needs to be part of the solution. And that's why I care about education. And I was on the Carmel School Board for 27 years, and I'd like to continue at the county level. And thank you all for being here on this important day.
So thank you. So what I want to do briefly before we begin with our speakers is just do a really quick agenda review for today. So today we're going to have 7 different speakers. They're going to have 10 minutes each to provide presentations. And these are distinguished community leaders, fierce community leaders in our, that are doing a lot of great work. So each speaker is going to deliver a very important message, a call to action, and information on community resources, so that we ask for your undivided attention. And please silence your cell phones as well. So we will have 20 minutes toward the end of the program for networking and connecting with our guest speakers to allow for some of that important work to happen. We do need to be out of the room by 3 o'clock, so we'll be making sure that we're on time on our schedule. So I'm going to begin before we start with the first speaker. I will provide a brief bio of the different guest speakers that we'll have here today. The full bios are on our website, on the Democratic Women of Monterey County, so you can go to the full website if you want additional information. But I'm just going to say all of these amazing speakers have amazing history of doing a lot of public service and a lot of different boards and committees that they serve. So mine are going to be brief, so I just want to say in advance that there's so much more that they've done. But because of time limitations, I'll provide the brief bio. So I'll begin with Mrs. Jacqueline Simon. Ms. Simon holds a master's, an MA in Pupil and Personnel Administration and Counseling, a BS in Community Corrections, Recreation, and Leisure, and a BA in African American Studies with a focus on entrepreneurism. She is the CEO of JCS Ventures, a business development consultant group, founder of Six Star, a social media and entertainment network, and founder of Transitions of Mentorship and Reentry Programs since 2007. Ms. Simon has been an elected official on the North Monterey County Fire Protection District Board, where she currently serves as Vice President, following in her late father's footsteps. She has been recognized by the California Congress member Dianne Feinstein as Woman of the Year for her experience and involvement in entrepreneurism and community commitment to nonprofits working at the grassroots level. So let's just give her a big Our next speaker is Yvonne Thomas. Yvonne Thomas was born and raised in the city of Seaside. She is a veteran journalist, media professional, and the founder and CEO of Precision Creative Services and White Golf Magazine. She is the president of the Monterey County NAACP. She currently serves on various committees and commissions. She was also the first African American student at the University of Southern California to graduate with a degree in sports information broadcast journalism in 1984. After graduating, she began a 30-year career in senior management and television post-production. Her career highlights are many, including working at ABC Sports, CBS Sports, and the Los Angeles Express of the U.S. Football League. So let's give her a big round of applause. Robert Daniels Jr. He's a founding member of the Monterey County Black Caucus, Friends of Seaside Parks, board member and steward of Havana Solis Community Garden, Programs and Finance Assistant at MIPA, City of Seaside Park and Recreation, and he's also a longtime resident of the City of Seaside. Now as an adult, he's dedicated his life to public service, attempting to rebuild the vibrancy and communal ties he once knew through political advocacy, hands in the soil approaches, and creating and supporting programs to teach and educate our young men and women. Let's give him a round of applause. Ms. Yuri Anderson. Yuri's family lived in Monterey County for nearly 60 years. She graduated from North Monterey County High School before earning a Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science from the University of Southern California and a Master's of Arts in Educational Administration from New York University. Yuri's career has included programmatic and organizational leadership roles in human services in organizations such as Monterey County, New York City, and San Francisco. She currently serves as the Chief Staff of Monterey County 4th District Supervisor Wendy Root Askew, where she focuses on issues related to land use, water, and regional transportation and traffic. She developed strategic planning, program development, fundraising, and community engagement expertise during her tenure as Vice President of the Community Investments for United Way, Monterey County. She serves as a publicly elected Monterey Peninsula Community College District Board of Trustees, past Vice President of the Democratic Women of Monterey County, and as at-large member of the Big Sur Land Trust Board of Directors and Child Abuse Prevention Council Board of Directors. She's a founding member of the Bright Futures for Monterey County Educational Partnership. Let's give her a big round of applause. Jean Holloway is an organizational consultant, nonprofit founder, and executive director, research analyst, and professor. Mr. Holloway earned his master's degree in educational counseling from Ottawa University and is finishing his PhD in industrial organizational psychology, and he'll be done with that, or he finished that in 2021. He has over 15 years experience resolving systemic communication issues in higher education, cultural diversity training, tackling diversity, equity, and inclusion issues. Let's give him a big hand of applause. Monica Tran Kim graduated from UC Santa Cruz with a bachelor's degree in ecology and evolution. She has over 2,600 hours coordinating experience as a state executive committee board member at large of CalPRIG, California Public Interest Group. From 2013 to 2016, she helped small businesses during the pandemic by offering free financial consultation and grant writing. She is the founder of MK Phoenix Project, who awards scholarships to support at-risk students from Salinas, Marina, and Seaside High School. She works as an emergency rental assistance coordinator and has prevented hundreds of families from losing their homes. Let's give her a big round of applause. Mr. Derrick Elder has a master's in social work. He's a program manager for the City of Seaside's Family and Community Support Program. He has a bachelor's degree in sociology from UC Santa Cruz. His focus is on providing direct mental health services, substance abuse, counseling, and clinical case management. Let's give him a big round of applause. And now it is my honor. Yes. So 10 minutes for all of the presenters. I apologize, I know the introduction took a little bit longer. But 10 minutes, and now with that, it is my honor to present our first guest speaker, Mrs. Jacqueline Simon.
Good afternoon. This is a very emotional day for me, as I am sure it probably is for each of you. If you're here, it means you also agree with us that there needs to be change. Part of change, as an educator, I also believe, she spoke earlier about change and how it can come about in education. As a professor teaching African American studies in San Jose and a number of other universities as an adjunct presenter, we constantly attempted to give people an opportunity to have the conversation, the unspoken conversations about how to implement change, how to be a part of an area that maybe people aren't quite understanding, but how we can help them and how we can learn from them as well. So that's why the theme is basically for us today to learn, to teach, and for me, to heal, because that's what I'm doing. This is part of my healing process. Hopefully it can be part of yours. The birthing of Reimagining Policing and the awesome opportunity that I had to present to my board of directors, the Democratic women of Monterey County, to allow me an opportunity to provide this to you today. On that horrific day, May 2020, 2 years ago, I was finishing up a Zoom meeting, sat down, turned on CNN to see what had happened between the past 2 hours of my Zoom meeting, and I saw this horrific experience. It took everything in my power to not lose my mind, to decide what could I do at this moment, because I saw so much wrong that was occurring there. You see, I'm a member of a family that has 4 generations of criminal justice professional work, and we all have felt that there is a brokenness in that system for all those years, 4 generations. So in watching those events and to see law enforcement literally have the nerve and the ability and the decision to murder someone on international TV, just told me, my goodness, just look how stuck we are. Look how bad that is. Look how emboldened he felt. He looked right into the cameras. So instead of losing my mind, I decided to sit down and write what is now our Reimagining Policing document that's in front of you. My attempt there was so that I could, at that moment, capture how I was affected, and in hopes that other educators and other individuals in time can help do some of the same that we're asking here. To reimagine policing, that means to change the way that it's been done in the past. For my community, the African American community, this has been baked in for 400 years. If you understand what I mean, maybe a little snap of the finger, because you and I know that that is the truth. For me today, I'm not trying to be sad about this. I'm simply trying to draw attention to areas that we can do something about. So with that in mind, after writing 12 initiatives in a 4-hour period in my living room that day, I presented it to my board of directors. And at the time, the president of our board, Kate Daniels, and I had many discussions about what we could do. But we decided to have a full-page ad that started with Dear Monterey County representatives, Board of Supervisors, mayors, and city council members. And the rest of these are the 9 initiatives then that we thought was very important and that could help heal some of the systemic problems and identify what is happening that is totally inappropriate. In addition, it gave us an opportunity to heal even then, because we had many sessions being teary-eyed about it, being emotional about it. But that's okay, because that's part of the healing. For me, it isn't simply having us read something and hopefully impart it in our lives and in law enforcement. But I'm thinking about the number of people that have called, individuals I've had conversations with. And one question that stands out to me most of all was from my 13-year-old nephew. And he said, Auntie, why do police officers hate us so much? And it was, took everything in my power to take a deep breath and say, I'm a prayerful person, so I said, Jesus, help me to say the right thing to him, because all police officers aren't hateful. All of law enforcement is not awful. But I do know some that should have never been given the opportunity of having a badge or a gun and the right to use it. Or a knee on nationwide, international-wide TV. So I said, Bryson, all police officers don't hate us. I've worked with many in my family, 4 generations. I've worked with many that were awesome and wonderful people that help us even today. But yes, there are some that should not have ever been in that position. So I call on law enforcement to make sure you're recruiting the right people. Do the deep dive into their backgrounds to find out where they are, who they are, because your life, my life, our children's lives can be held accountable so that we can have the best possible people there that are supposed to be protected and serving. I had an opportunity to have this discussion with my good friend Gail Morton that I invited today. And Gail, I'm so glad you came, because we both agreed with that. So at the end of the day, I have a request, a call to action. And I had the opportunity to speak with Pete Ciros from Jimmy Panetta's office. I spoke to Jimmy, he wanted to be here. Congressman Panetta wanted to be here, but he's busy now. But he did say that Pete Spiros and I and Susie Brissa, the director, I believe it's the district director of Jimmy Panetta's office, is coming here today to read a letter that Pete and I spoke of in the past 2 days of what's important about today. And what my call to action is, we have to get our legislators involved. There must be laws to be held accountable to when these individuals decide that they can take a life for someone that has a broken taillight or a registration issue. They have to stop and think twice. Do they want to be held accountable in regards to that? The only way that's going to happen is if we pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. If you agree with me, because I do believe we can do better. I'm actually hopeful because I had a wonderful board that embraced me and what I've gone through and helped edit and participate and say yes, they were in agreement with that too. And that is evident by them signing on to a full-page ad that we have had since hundreds of people sign on to. So before I close, I'm going to share one last area that's important. I thank all of the committees and individuals that took time to say you'd be here today, to share your truth and wonderful levels of information that helps to make this viable for us for the future, because I am hopeful about that. I really want to thank Rosalind Green and my initial work in helping to develop this, because her daughter was ill at the time, and yet we still met Yvonne Thomas, the Black Caucus, NAACP, others, Monica, because it takes all of us to say, even though we're so very busy doing so much in our lives, and especially today with COVID and all the other issues that we're dealing with, we still need to work together to make a difference here. So my last, maybe it's a minute, or maybe hopefully a little longer, I want to give to Jimmy's effort today is to bring up and invite my former colleague on other programs, Community Alliance for Safety and Peace, Susie Brissa from Jimmy Panetta's office. She is the district director. The call to action is what we're talking about here today. Can we give Susie a hand?
This is something that Jimmy wrote for you, so I will read it. Please accept my sincere gratitude for your invitation to the George Floyd Forum yesterday, today, tomorrow, a teaching and learning opportunity. I regret that I'm not able to be here today, but applaud you for initiating this important forum as a contribution to our nation's ongoing conversation in response to the murder of George Floyd, as well as the unjust deaths of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others. Today we also mourn the horrific tragedies in Buffalo and yesterday in Texas, and so many other senseless and sinister mass shootings. I am hopeful this forum will add to the national conversation by addressing those calamities, disparities, injustices, and the lack of accountability where it exists. We must be passionate and proactive in our attempts to change historical and structural racism and ensure the proper training of law enforcement so that George Floyd is not just another name on the long list of those who never should have died. Currently in Congress, our goal is to enact legislation correcting past injustices and reforming the use of certain practices that have led to wrongful deaths while preserving the invaluable role of law enforcement to keep the peace and keep our families safe. To help reach that goal, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act in March of 2021. This bill would help ensure accountability for misconduct, restrict the use of certain policing practices, enhance transparency and data collection, and establish best practices and training requirements. Although the House passed this bill 1 year ago, it remains stuck in the U.S. Senate. Nevertheless, I continue to urge my colleagues in the Senate to get back to the negotiating table in order to pass a version of this bill and send it to the President to be signed into law. Fortunately, even with the Senate's inaction, the President is acting today. It's been reported that he will sign an executive order creating accountability measures at the federal law enforcement level that focus on the creation of a national database tracking police misconduct, the improvement of investigations and internal disciplinary measures, and a requirement for body cameras to be worn at all times. While there is no single piece of legislation or executive action that will erase our nation's history of racism, the passage of the Justice in Policing Act is a major step forward in providing some reform that is needed among certain law enforcement agencies. As our nation continues to call for change and the U.S. House of Representatives passes legislation that will bring about change, my House colleagues and I also focus on how we can support and sustain safety in our communities. I appreciate what the Forum and the Democratic Women of Monterey County are striking to achieve with the partnership of the NAACP, and I extend my gratitude to Yvonne Thomas, Robert Daniels Jr., Derrick Elder, Yuri Anderson, Jean Holloway, Monica Kim, and Ana Velasquez for their participation. In closing, thank you again for your invitation and for the many important contributions that your organizations make in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for all the wonderful work that you've done on behalf of the Democratic Women from Monterey County. So now it is my honor to bring up our next guest speaker, which is Yvonne Thomas, who's going to be talking about holding the criminal justice system accountable.
Good afternoon, everyone. On the solemn anniversary of George Floyd's murder, we remain outraged by the reminder of the vivid memory of convicted felon Derrick Chauvin kneeling on his neck while the world watched his life end in 9 seconds on national television. In 2020, we knew that it was time to figuratively kneel on the neck of the criminal justice system until everyone responsible for this heinous act was fully prosecuted. We wanted George Floyd's family, friends, and loved ones to know that his death was not in vain, and we would not remain silent. We expressed our anguish about waking up every morning and hearing news reports that yet another Black man had been profiled and murdered by an officer of the law. Our mantra in 2020 was, bad cops must go to jail. And in this particular case, the system worked. Well, it's now 2022, and there's a new battle cry. Yesterday was a rough one for this entire nation. And I watched numerous news reports with lawmakers lamenting that they just don't know what to do. But we actually do know what to do. Domestic terrorists in these United States must be identified and stopped before they kill any more innocent bystanders. We must fight to permanently remove the militaristic arsenal from their hands that they are so easily arming themselves with. The land of the free does not mean it gives anyone the right to target and shoot down your fellow man or our children for any reason. Sometimes when looking out into the world, we are laser focused on these often overwhelming and troubled times. Racism continues to rear its ugly head nationwide, as we witnessed in Buffalo, New York, just 10 days ago. And here at home, we've witnessed deliberate and disturbing acts in our own communities that have unleashed emotions of anger and sadness. Now, if we don't use these events as a wake-up call and an opportunity to open the lines of communication between the races, then we will be trapped in this unending and very deadly loop. Our task here, in this great melting pot that is Monterey County, has taught us that we must band together, reinforce necessary alliances, and serve as an example nationally and internationally, and show that there is room at the table for everybody. We must continue the fight against systemic racism, and we must protect our children at all costs. We are witnessing our ancestors' dreams, which was made possible by their tremendous sacrifice. They've laid the path for us to walk on, and it is now up to us to lean on their resilient spirit and draft a schematic diagram of the future that turns our generational pain into power. Last month, we were so proud to witness the poise and courage of Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as she weathered a firestorm of personal and professional attacks on her judicial record and her character. But she persevered and will now be the first Black woman to serve as justice. We have shown that we are indeed survivors, but the survivor mentality that we have been so proud to lay claim to is starting to feel as if we are wearing blinders, and we simply don't know when to say, enough is enough. We've grown weary from the blatant disrespect and dog whistle politics that is business as usual in some parts of this very divided country. Instead of looking for ways to unify us and call for peace, the United States of America regressed 50 years under past administrations. So it is now up to us. It is time to relinquish the victim mentality and recognize the great power we have when we stand together and demand change. So today, when you go home and turn on your television and you see the tears streaming down the faces of the parents of the children massacred yesterday in Uvalde, Texas, it's important that you don't just watch it. It's important that we all feel the pain and share the anger being displayed by our brothers and sisters who will be looking not only for an outlet to vent, but who also desperately searching for leaders to help our nation navigate through these troubled times. It is essential that we focus on voter mobilization, holding our elected officials accountable, and voting out ineffective politicians. It speaks volumes when we know that we've given our policymakers the power to stop the carnage, and they won't do anything about it. These domestic terrorists do it because they can. They do it because we allow it. There's a very popular song lyric that says, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. The reality is that all of our children's futures are at risk. And we are failing them if we don't find a way to force our elected officials to stop this madness. I'm going to end with one of my favorite quotes. You are more powerful than you know, and they fear the day that you discover it. It's way past time that we know it. And I leave you with this thought today. How many more lives need to be lost before we are willing to show it? Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne, for those powerful words and the call to action. I mean, sometimes as we feel powerless, it's good to know that we have power, and the power is in our hands, and the action is ours to take. Thank you. So our next speaker, please help me welcome our next speaker, is Robert Daniels Jr. from the Black Caucus of Monterey County, who will be talking about criminal justice systems, separate and unequal systems.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First of all, I would just like to thank my elders for the opportunity to speak my piece. It's not too often that I'm in the presence of my elders. And I apologize for the miscommunication. I actually wanted to speak on apathy and how it has affected our community now. Just to give my perspective as a young man, when George Floyd happened, it wasn't something new to me. It's something that has been passed on from stories of my elders, the Watts riots, the LA riots. But really, I honestly thought that the justice system would have came to a halt and proceeded in the right way, but that's not what happened. So we realized that public safety didn't equal policing and that we needed to take initiative to further our community as a whole. One of the biggest points that I wanted to focus on was education, that we realized that a lot of our young men and women didn't have the tools necessary to adequately traverse the society and the culture that has become evident through media, through the news, and through, I want to say, different social policies that we've kind of brought up on our own. But apathy has been a very big thing. We realized that a lot of attention wasn't paid to the lower level of things, the city budgets, the board of supervisor budgets, what was being taught in our schools. But then we realized how big that really affected us when you didn't have young men that really knew how to traverse the different things that society was throwing at them, how to traverse relationships, how to traverse when violence was necessary, how to adequately handle your manhood and the aggressiveness that comes with that. And also for young women, how to just traverse the world and not be overly sexualized, how not to just be compartmentalized like if we only served a certain purpose in this world. So I just want to say that paying attention to the small things and paying attention to things on the local level is definitely something that we need to do moving forward. Me, myself, I come from the community of Seaside, so I put very much pride into attending my local city council meetings, attending my board of supervisor meetings, and just putting my feet into the community to, I want to say, multiply my benefit, but really apathy is a big thing because there's not a lot of us, and there's not a lot of us that put our feet forward. And we don't have a lot of funding to work with. So bringing people into the fold and motivating people into the real deal on the ground issues is difficult. So I would just say putting more attention on where the money's going, putting more attention on how the youth are being raised, and putting more attention on how our schools are being conducted is something that needs to be put on the forefront. And with that, I'll close it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those words, and really looking at things at the local level is really critical. So thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for talking about apathy, because I think we have to talk about some of the challenges that we have at our community level. Transparency in budgets at the local level, at the county level are really critical. So thank you for touching on that. So I will introduce now our next guest speaker is Yuri Anderson from Monterey Peninsula College, who will be sharing information on sharing educational opportunities and training within college environments.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for inviting me to be here today. And I am going to be speaking as a trustee of a member of the Board of Trustees of Monterey Peninsula College. But as I talked to Jacqueline earlier, I come into all of these spaces not as just one thing. I'm not just a trustee. First and foremost, I'm a mother at this point. I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a member of this community. And so those are all of the things I'm bringing today. And I'm telling you, it was really hard to be here as a mother. I want to thank my colleague, Chair Rosalind Green of the NPC Board of Trustees for allowing me to represent the college this afternoon. I know she wasn't sure she could be here, so Roz, if there's anything you want to add, you please do that. I'm going to ask you all to follow me. As my 7-year-old might say to me, follow me, Mama. And we're just going to walk around, right? I'm gonna follow her where she wants to go, and I hope that when I get to the end of this path, we will be somewhere together. Because trying to organize the thoughts around the feelings of the murder of George Floyd, what it means to me as an elected official, what it means to me as a mother, and then reconcile that with also what happened yesterday in Texas is really, really challenging. So, I'm gonna start with reading something that I read 2 years ago at the Monterey Peninsula College Board of Trustees. My response when I was in chair to processing the feelings that I had around the murder of George Floyd and what it meant to me and what I was promising to do as an elected official. And I apologize to anyone who has already heard this, but it's shocking how relevant it continues to be today. Over the course of this past month, our nation has experienced significant pain. The intersection of a global pandemic with witnessing the brutal murder of George Floyd, subsequent social unrest, ushering in a new civil rights era in which our government and social systems are being called upon to be redesigned so that people of color have equitable opportunity to thrive. This is actually the board's third meeting this month. And some may have wondered why I, as board chair and a woman of color, have not made a statement addressing the pain our community is feeling, and calling for this college district to engage in actions to ensure we do not continue harming our local communities of color, particularly Black and brown people. The truth of the matter is that I couldn't speak until now. Like my Black brothers and sisters, I have been in pain. I have been angry. I have been afraid. Witnessing another senseless killing of a Black man and learning more and more of the names of Black and brown people who have unjustly lost their lives. I have been at a loss for words. And as a mother, I have felt more fear than I have ever felt in my life. The fear has been the worst for me. I have lived in this community for nearly my entire life, only really having left to pursue higher education. Up until recently, I have never felt afraid to move freely through our community in which I've lived, whether it be in Prunedale, where I grew up, in LA, where I went to college, in New York, where I earned my master's, in San Francisco, where I grew as a professional, or in Marina, where I live now, raising my family. This is no longer true. I no longer feel safe. And as some of you know, I am a runner, or I was 2 years ago. In recent weeks, I have felt fear running on my usual paths and through my new neighborhood. I have also become aware of the fact that I have unconsciously chosen to wear brightly colored running gear, clothes that clearly distinguish me as a woman, as a Black body which you can fear less. The body of my son or my nephews can't use this protective layering to make their Black bodies less frightening, and so I fear for them. I fear for their lives. In 2020, I fear for the lives of children, particularly boys who are growing into Black and brown men. I hope this makes you as angry as it makes me. But I'm not someone who allows myself to live in a place of fear or anger. Instead, I push myself to live in a place of action. In fact, moving from fear to action is how I ended up on the board at MPC. I realize that everyone is starting from a different place in their journey, and so our actions will necessarily be different. Be it as it may, each of us must take steps to make this world safe for Black and brown bodies. I urge us to begin to work locally by making this college a safe place for Black and brown bodies, including our students, our faculty, our staff, our contractors, our vendors, anyone who assists us in achieving the mission of this college. And because I don't believe in testing on material you haven't been taught, I want my colleagues on this board to know, I want you in this community to know, where I'm coming from when I say I am working on achieving our goal of providing an educational environment which emphasizes inclusiveness and equity-minded principles. The equity-based principles that I'm focused on advancing at MPC, centering race. Study after study has borne out that when we control for every other factor or intersectionality, including gender, ability, poverty, race is the common denominator of disparate outcomes. Because of this, we need to work through any discomfort and include race and racial disparities in every discussion and decision-making process. We need to surface implicit bias. Sometimes we don't even know that we're working against ourselves, our own goals. We must intentionally and systematically examine and redesign policies and practices which perpetuate institutionalized racism in every layer of this institution, from the classroom to contracting to hiring to this boardroom. We need to challenge explicit bias by calling out the microaggressions which create a hostile environment for people of color. Racism has no place in the MPC Community College District. And when you take Loving Day and Juneteenth into consideration, May and June 2020 was emotionally and historically significant. And I apologize then if my silence has caused harm to our students and staff. I have been struggling. I was stuck. But I hope that you haven't questioned my commitment to moving this board's goals around equity from mere words to action. Please know that I am unstuck. I have remained unstuck for 2 years. I stand ready to work with this board and each member of our MPC community to move forward with actions to create the racially just, inclusive, and equitable college for every person of color we have the privilege of serving. And so in that time, since then, my friends at the DWMC issued a call to action. I had the opportunity as the chair of board trustees to ask my college to sign on to this as individuals. We had an opportunity as a college that hosts the South Bay Consortium to bring the public safety training director to MPC to have a conversation about what was the curriculum that we were offering law enforcement that our college was sponsoring, and ask them to consider these principles. Because it is, as it says here, it is our duty of local electeds to encourage the transformation. And, you know, one of my bows is as Chief of Staff to Supervisor Wendy Brudascu. Wendy is an ally. My friend Kate over here is an ally. And what do? As a woman of color, as a Black woman, I call on my allies to step up. Move beyond saying I'm an ally and take action. Stand up in places where systemic racism doesn't allow me to stand there and ask for these changes and do it for me. But at the same time, I have earned my place at a table. And so I do. I sit there on the MPC board, and I hope, Rosalind, you would agree. I ask these questions. I challenge what are our policies. I push to make sure that we have vendors that represent our community, that we aren't just using the same old systems. You know, where was the RFP? Who did we advertise this to? Let's give communities of color an opportunity to break into these systems. That's my role as an elected official. And as a woman of color, and as a mom, well, before I do that, as a DWMC board member, it was a privilege to work on this Reimagining Policing initiative with my colleagues, and I'm so proud of Jacqueline for bringing it forward. And the one thing I will say I contributed is the names were in here. I said, you move those names to the front, the top. Those are what's important. Don't put them at the end. Don't bury the people who have died at the bottom of our initiative. Let's keep them at the forefront, because this is about people at the end of the day. This is about my son, who I am working desperately to protect. And I expect all of you to be working desperately to protect him as well. I have the little picture, my social media, right? It's me looking at the camera. 2 pictures, one I drew off the internet. One says, all mothers were summoned when George Floyd called out for his mama. We were. I heard that call. I hear that call. I urge every mother and father in this room to hear that call and hold the hell onto it. The other one, some are protesting on social media. Some are protesting in the streets. Some are donating silently. Some are educating themselves. Some are having tough conversations with friends and family. A revolution has many lanes. Be kind to yourself and others who are traveling in the same direction. Just keep your foot on the gas. And that is my call to action to all of you. Keep your foot on the gas. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuri, for those powerful words and for that call to action. We will make sure that we keep our foot on the gas and that we keep moving forward. Now, it's my honor to introduce our next speaker, Jean Holloway from Cultural Infusion, who's going to provide and share information on a data-driven tool that identifies biases, educational development, and training solutions for the public-private sector.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to set my timer for 8 minutes. Take it after Mr. Moses. I always give time back. Appreciate you, Mr. Moses. Take notes from me. That's one thing I always learn is take notes from those who are a little bit older than you, you'll go far. Just playing with you. So glad to be here today. Excited to talk about a data-driven tool, but in honoring of those who were taken from this earth. I'm going to talk about that, but I'm going to focus on more of the heart of the matter of standing here as a black, brown, chocolate man. When I was in the classroom as a professor, I used to say things that were funny, but then I would drive home a lot of data and research regarding systemic racism, systemic oppression, and what has happened to not just my race, but so many races, if not every race, that's on this earth. But the point behind that was, is how could I stand up there and not be angry with those who hurt my ancestors? And it's not that the anger wasn't there. I can go all the way back to Miss Holloway, who was a part of the Democratic Party in North Carolina, and she was labeled a communist for her rights to fight for African Americans to have rights to vote. So I come with a heritage of people who fought, and strong women. I stand here and I thank you women who are progressive and strong, because that's the point of being here today. I recognize who invited me to speak, so I want to acknowledge that in any way that I can come alongside you, or be behind you, or lead in the front when they're putting me in the front, I have you always in mind. In honor of my late mother who passed in 2018 from cancer as well, one lesson I took from that is you can rise from ashes, you can rise from devastating things that happen to you, or you can be defeated and be depressed. And we as people, as blacks, have been rising and continue to rise. I am not a victim. I refuse to let people who look like me or don't look like me put me in that category, because that makes me powerless. But what am I going to do with that power? So yes, I went back to school and got some education, master's, and been a professor, and I'm a consultant and have a nonprofit and doing all these things. And I believe God given certain of us certain gifts. And too much is given, much is required. I believe those sayings because I've always had gifts to do multiple things. I had to learn how to focus my energy and channel that into really helping and serving those And then the return always came back. I always used to have the focus, well, what about me? When am I going to have this and going to have those things? But the more I served and the more I invested in others, the return just kept coming back. So I'm so excited to talk about this tool. You can go to the next slide. I'm not going to go over all the details of it, but you can have access to this. But in the educational system, in the political system, in the government system, in which I function in the government system as well, I won't go into that role today because that's not why I'm focused here today. But we have to focus on what is research and data showing, and that needs to come along with our emotions and what we know about the past, and we need to use that into the future because our children that are coming up, as the speaker before me was saying, they are empowered by what is happening in society and by knowledge and information. So we as researchers and as data-driven people, we need to provide that information to the college system or whatever system, and looking at the approach of what does your data say? What does the data say about what you collected in the past? And what does the data say about the people that you're serving now? It is not enough to make inferences based on what you think or what data has said in the past. You need to gather information on what they are saying about themselves now. Because what they are saying about themselves now has a lot to do with intersectionality, it has to do with sexuality, it has to do with rights and wanting to be able to express themselves the way that they feel they should. And we that are in power have to have that responsibility to guide and lead them into the right path, and to guide and lead those away from the wrong path. We can't just focus on the ones who want to go on the right path. We have to have heart and intelligence to even help the ones who need to help themselves. As a consultant, I have to teach others who consult with me. We have to help organizations to help themselves. It is not just our name that makes them want to work with us. We have to show that we do our due diligence to understand what their problems are, and when we understand what their problems are, we can use our approach. It's not our approach that's so golden. It's what that approach does in interaction with your problem, and that ability to say, hey, I'm here to grow with you. I'm here to last with you. Last time I checked, I'm in my 40s now. My body has been growing. It's kind of declining now. But it's been growing for a long time. And I noticed that it's going to continue to the day that it goes back to the grave. There's things I can do to take care of it and keep it well upkeep. And there's things I cannot do to it and I can mess it up. And so I'm going to do more of those things as I'm getting older. That's wisdom. That's going to reserve and preserve my body so that it can endure. My grandmother lived to be 104 years old. My mom died at 59. So I might end up in the middle if I don't keep it straight and do what grandma did, eat right and do those things that are wise. Next slide, please. I wanted to just show this up here about the concept that cultural infusion talks about with multicultural, cross-cultural, all these terms people have heard, and then intercultural, where all these different cultures are coming together. That's not easy to digest, to deal with, and then when you deal with resources and the lack of resources and limited resources, I'm hoping that people who come in power, that they have a mindset to bring in other people who will help them to investigate how can we use these resources to help people to understand the intercultural stuff that are happening in your community. That I'm not just black, I'm just breaking down how intercultural I am. I'm not just a man, babe, I'm a color. I am also a veteran, all right? I'm also a father. I'm also a husband. I'm all these things happening at one time. I actually have a lot of power when I have that federal badge, and I've gotten pulled over several times, and this is nothing to brag about. But when I showed them, hey, this is what I do for my work, it wasn't to get away from a ticket. It was to show them that I work hard just like you. You can write the ticket, and I'm going to pay it, because I got enough money to pay it. But you also can look at me and say, you know what, sir? Could you please just watch that turn or that corner? He noticed that there was no aggression in my voice because my father taught me well. Keep your hands still. Don't you say nothing with an aggressive voice. Say yes, sir, and no, sir. In my early stages, when I was a professor, I used to be angry about that. Why do I have to say that? Why can the person that looks like the opposite of me, why doesn't he have to say that too? And through my own journey, and going through lots of hardship in life, I realized, why are you worried about that, boy? What is your father trying to teach you? Not that you can be powerless to the person who's in the majority in power, so that he can look at you, and that when he recognizes what you had to do to get that badge, that he can make a decision right there and then. Is he going to respect me for who I am? Or am I going to get his badge enough information because he's having a bad day and I'm going to even go to the judge? Yes, I will. I walked to the judge and I've explained to the judge, this police officer must have been having a bad day, Judge. And he said, they might have been having that, Mr. Holloway, but you broke the law. So you're going to pay this ticket, right? I said, yes, sir, I will. But he said, I want to honor you, Mr. Holloway, for coming to the system and explaining to you your experience. My encouragement is, I learned all this stuff and research and stuff, not to think that I'm somebody or get a doctorate degree to become somebody. It's so that I can give people who don't look like me, people who will be my ally, and some that won't be my ally, I want to give them a great, powerful experience that's going to change their life. I'm not here to do nothing else but to change lives. Once I realized that purpose about my life, I'm riding on the back of all the powerful black women that were before me. I can't always say powerful black men. But that didn't stop me. Because in the depth of my mom game, I realized all the things she was teaching me, I don't have her no more physically to remind me, so now I gotta put it into play. And what she was teaching me actually worked. It's very, very powerful. Love people, care about them, be willing to serve more than to be served. Every time you make an investment, expect a return. It is ridiculous to do something and say, we might not even care because we black. It ain't gonna matter. I am not gonna set myself up for that. I'm gonna do this, and I am always gonna be black. The last time I look in the mirror, I still am black, and that doesn't change anything about who I am on the inside. And the goal for me as an individual in the 40s, for the rest of my life, is to express who I am on the inside, on the outside, and encourage those people who are lazy and don't want to get up, to get up. I think about, can you go to the next slide, even though I'm not going to talk about it. I got about 2 more minutes. When I think about some of the things that people, my brothers, and I'm going to talk about the brothers because George Floyd's not here no more, that we might be struggling with. And I could be just like that, and I could be struggling like that too. But there's still something inside of us. All of us have that seed of excellence. And my role is to look at the bad circumstances, appreciate the women who are strong, and usually, the reason why I appreciate a woman, because they have, without a woman, I wouldn't even be here today. They had to go through that pain to bring me here, right? So I want to honor them and go through the birthing pain myself and be a real man and not give up. Not because I don't make any mistakes, but to stand there and take the blows until we get to that destination, that final destination. I remember, lastly, I'm going to share with you, and you can get these slides later. I remember I shared a message, or actually I did the speech of Martin Luther King in front of a high school when I was a high school counselor. I had a spin of doing that too. And I had the voice, I have a dream, and I laid it out. I did not know, teachers coming up to me, that was great, Gene, that was great. You know who it had a major impact on? Me. When I could say those things and listen and watch for the next 6 to 7 years and see how the work that I participate in is bringing that dream to pass. And there's people in this world who are of the evil force who want to cause me to have a nightmare, but I'm going to fight against it and make sure the dream comes alive, and that there are going to be more people who don't look like me, who are not only going to be allies, as she says, they're going to stand up where I cannot. And I'm refused to say that I cannot stand up. I'm going to stand up there and be persecuted, but I'm also going to bring research that's going to bring a difference. And with that research, you're going to put money behind it, right? Because I'm doing everything that needs to be done to show you that I did my homework. That's one thing I had to learn. Lastly, my first job is to be a professor in psychology. I went to the chair of psychology. She was a Caucasian woman with glasses. I never forget. She said, "Can I help you, young man?" I said, "Yes, I want to teach you." I already knew what was required. I already had the requirements. She says, "Do you have all these requirements?" I said, "Yes, I do." She said, "Why do you want to teach here?" I said, "I love psychology. I want to make a difference." She said, "I'll let you teach one course." I went on to teach 400 courses there. I had great reviews by students. I'm going to leave you with that. Thank you for giving me your time.
thank you so much for bringing so much energy. And thank you. I really like this. One of the slides that talked about diversity is about not about counting people. Or diversity is about counting people. Inclusion is about insisting everyone counts. Thank you. Thank you. So we have 2 more speakers, and we want to make sure we are going to keep on time since we do have to leave by 3. So I will introduce our next speaker, Monica Tran Kim, who's going to be talking to us on advocating mind, body, and spiritual well-being, assessment, and referral services in partnership with the nonprofit organizations.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Monica. Ms. Simon and I co-founded Nexus Wellness Solutions. I'll be going over a brief history of myself and the importance of a community working together in a time of crisis. You can go to the next slide. After college, I moved to Washington State to escape a traumatic family experience. While biking from a job interview, my foot missed the pedal after biking 10 miles and I slid down a hill. I crashed into a tree, twisted my ankle, and it began to rain. At that moment, I felt the exhaustion of being housing insecure. I felt the weight of student loan debt suffocating me, and I talked to God about our broken medical system that didn't seem accessible to heal compounded trauma and hurt. That is when I heard a comforting voice resonate and said that as long as I continued helping others, every hardship I was going through will be okay. Afterwards, the rain stopped, and from that moment, I understood that compounded and generational trauma is difficult to heal by ourselves, that it takes a community to move forward in a time of crisis. You can go to the next slide. Thus, it was natural for Ms. Simon and I to serve others during a time where existing problems intensified. We collaborated over the last 2 years with various nonprofits to serve in the areas of health, wellness, education, training, and research development in order to tackle issues or speak about domestic violence, job insecurity, food insecurity, racism, and violence on people of color. We can go to the next slide. We are put on this earth to help people help themselves by expanding and seeking opportunities to heal. This is why we are coming here today to heal one of the most tragic traumas that has happened and that so many have experienced nationwide. Next slide. Housing, food, and health will have an impact on overall health. In the areas of housing, we've partnered with Home Match of Monterey County and the Veterans Transition Center to case manage individuals that are facing housing crises or that are losing their jobs due to COVID. In the next slide. We have worked with nonprofits such as All in Monterey County and the Veterans Transition Center in order to hold food drives to feed our families that were going hungry. Ms. Simon herself donated a portion of her life savings in order to hold over 8 food drives throughout Monterey, Seaside, Crooндale, and Soledad, so our families will be fed, so educational supplies will be given to our students. In the next area, Nexus Wellness Solutions has donated and supplied COVID-19 testing solutions for non-insured laborers, veterans, and community members. On the last slide, today is about teaching, healing, organizing, and will be our way of coping with the horrific accidents or events that have continued to occur even to today. Thank you, everyone.
much for all of your, thank you so much first for sharing your story. And thank you for all the wonderful resources and everything you've done also to give back to our community. So our next speaker, please help me welcome Derrick Elder, who will be speaking to us today on addressing community needs and issues to lead to more positive outcomes.
All right, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
As introduced, my name is Derrick Elder. My role is the Family Community Support Practitioner for the City of Seaside's Family Community Support Program. I'll be visiting a little bit later on what the program is about because it is actually important to making change as we're discussing today related to policing and just that community support that's so very much needed. So yeah, thank you. All right, next slide, please. Okay, I'm gonna start off with this, so just listen to this for a moment. Imagine leaving your home every day hoping you will return. Just let that sink in for a moment. That's what plagues so many of our brown and black people in our communities, and I'm definitely one of those. And I ask myself that question still 2 years later to this day after George Floyd, when there has been many changes. We have improved, we are getting better. But still, as we know, just like the incidents in Texas, just like the incident in Buffalo and other places, we still have very far to go. So as you can see here on this slide, 2 years later, and this is something actually was relative to when I first heard about the George Floyd, incident and the many others that year, was I needed some way to reflect. Some way to consider, something just to give me a prompt or a guide for me to figure out where are my feelings, where are my thoughts, how do I even respond to this at all? And so as you can see here, in this prompt, it specifically speaks to my relationship as it relates to the police and how I feel and understand at least what their purpose is. So just going down the questions really quickly, when I see police, I feel, and I'm going to share at least what my personal kind of answers were to this. You can take these questions, you can, for yourself decide how they might be relate or how you might answer them. So when I see police, I feel nervous, anxious, and angry. When I think of the harm done by the system, I feel frustrated and disappointed in my body. For me, healing looks like self-care and taking social action. A world free of police will allow me and my community to reframe oppression, racism, poverty, inequity, and the many others as public health issues rather than crime. I pledge to process my feelings and my experiences with the criminal legal system by actively engaging social action. I pledge to create community safety without the police by encouraging community togetherness. Finally, I pledge to support the healing of my community by simply expressing love. Now, while these questions specifically speak to relationships with the police, I want you to think about them as they may apply to all systems, right? Whether it's our systems of politics, our legal systems, our healthcare system, economy, and etc. Next slide, please. So, and speaking back again to my role now with the City of Seaside, there is current efforts that is there right now promoting healing. And I do have to give the City of Seaside its props. I gotta acknowledge it for the fact that it did listen. It did listen. It listened to its community members, it listened to society at large in saying there needs to be a change. There needs to be something that is an alternative that is different than just 911, that is different than just police, law enforcement, fire even, as it relates to the fact that 911 doesn't know everything, right? Everyone knows 911, but 911 does not know everything. And so the City of Seaside took action and they created the Family and Community Support Program. Our primary capacity is working in mobile crisis response, as it highlights there. We partner with city government, Seaside PD, which is underlined there to emphasize, fire, local community-based organizations, and we basically are there to help provide work, or help, I should say, from our scope of practice: social service, social work, therapy, mental health, counseling, mentoring, etc. By being able to work closely with city government, Seaside Police Department, other departments across the city, it lets us start to have awareness, understanding what out there as it relates to our systems are creating or continue to create the inequities, the challenges that our communities are facing, and then it allows us to be in positions where we can advocate for systemic change. So literally getting to talk directly with the mayor of the city, right? City council members, working in partnership, let's say, with police, although we're not embedded within the department. And that is one of the challenges that I did note here, is there's still some limitations to how we can impact change. Since we're not directly in the offices, directly in the ear all the time of the people in power, we don't necessarily get to have the total influence we would like to have. But it's a start, right? So we gotta at least give the props and acknowledgement for it. So when we think about healing and accountability, we can think about 4 major categories. That's love, communication, accountability itself, and intimacy. And you think about these all as kind of a wheel, and in the center, we want to think about what these things can do. We want to engage these things so we can build and maintain trust. So we can have shared decision making amongst not only our politicians, government, the funding deciders, the people in power, policymakers, but the very lowest person in the community themselves. We want to think about honoring strengths. We focus a lot in our society on deficits, right? But we don't give too much attention to the strengths, no matter how small they are. So we really want to acknowledge those from the individual level, but also to a collective community as a whole. And then we want to think about how do we truly create safety, right? Is safety having people run around with guns and badges, right? And the ability, as I say, a license to kill? Or is it really how do we come together, recognize what we're missing, the gaps and our needs for all of our community members, and figuring out ways to provide that? Whether it is counting on our government and those in power, or us simply just as community members helping each other out. So I want to kind of leave you with this last slide, and I'm not going to go through my personal answers with this one, because I think this is the powerful work that can be done is for you to do the own, kind of finding your strengths and figuring out where you can affirm yourself in this work. But I also want to just acknowledge that we as Black and brown people are a beautiful, culturally rich, and innovative group. That is our history. We are the foundation of world civilization. All we need is strong love, self-love to translate to powerful societal change. Thank you.
Derrick, thank you so much for your words. Thank you so much for your writing for resistance. I really like that, for providing us with tools that we can share, we can take home, and we can start doing that in our communities as well. And thank you for the work that you're doing with the City of Seaside to really become inclusive and to really become a community that's a community for all. So thank you for that work. So we are at the end. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here in this space together. I know it's been a difficult time for us. When I walked in, I was, like many of you, very devastated. And now that we've been here for almost two hours, I find hope. I find a lot of hope. I find a lot of allies here. I know there's a lot of work in front of us, but it's great to know that we're powerful leaders in this room, and our voices are going to resonate. Our actions are going to move our communities forward where we need to be, and to keep our babies safe, and to keep our communities safe. So with that, I thank you so much. We heard many powerful messages, many wonderful call to actions. I'll just share a few of those call to actions today is, join the DWMC and help us support candidates who align with our values. Join or support the organizations that you heard from today and help them to advance their service and their initiatives. And let's support state and federal legislative policies that build inclusive communities that uplift our Black and Brown communities and all of the people within our communities. So thank you so much for joining us again. I just want to thank everybody that was part of making today happen. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for bringing this forth and for making sure that as tough as it was today, we find hope and we are going to move together as a community, making things better for all. Thank you.